I always hated that painting, some abstract mess of blood-red streaks and twisted gray smears, hanging crooked above our fireplace. She said it represented chaos and rebirth. I said it looked like someone spilled wine and shame all over a canvas. The morning it hung perfectly straight for the first time in 5 years, I knew something was off. It was like walking into a crime scene where the blood had been scrubbed too clean. No fighting, no drama, no screaming match the night before, which was already weird, but that sterile silence, that unnatural tidiness, it screamed like a silent siren. The living room had been reset like a stage, and I was the fool walking into the second act of a play I hadn't realized had started. I stood there, staring at that damned painting, feeling a sick weight in my gut. Everything was too clean. Throw pillows aligned, her coffee mug wiped spotless on the counter, her laptop closed for once. That thing was never closed. Ever. It was like her third arm, open tabs, frantic typing, lecture notes, peer-reviewed articles, snarky student emails. But there it was, neatly closed, its screen dark, mouse perfectly centered on the pad. She had an early morning faculty meeting, or so she said last night, but the university had posted a campus-wide advisory email that the whole humanities building had been closed due to a gas leak. I got the alert at 6:15 a.m. She didn't mention that. I walked up to her desk, half expecting it to be another one of her chaotic war zones, but it was eerily orderly. Then I noticed her planner, not her digital one, but the old leather-bound one she used only for her private notes. She kept it in a locked drawer, the one she never let me touch. The lock was still intact. What wasn't intact was her trust in me. She must have rushed out and left the key in her coat pocket. And since I did the laundry that morning, something she usually micromanaged, I had it in hand. I opened the drawer. Inside, the planner lay flat on top of a slim folder labeled Draft, MA Candidate, R. Denson. My stomach curled. Ryan Denson. That name was familiar. One of her grad students. I remembered her mentioning how brilliant but troubled he was. I remember her smiling in that distant way when she talked about him. I opened the folder and flipped through the pages, annotated academic writing, sharp commentary in her handwriting, and at the very bottom, a note she must have scribbled quickly, almost unconsciously. Rewrite his final section, his thoughts, my words. I stared at it for a long time, blinking. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she was helping. But I knew the difference between collaboration and corruption. And then I opened the planner. Inside the front pocket was a photo, a printed selfie, of all things. Them. At some quiet table in a cafe I didn't recognize. Her head leaned against his shoulder. His hand, firmly resting on her thigh under the table. You don't forget what betrayal looks like. It's in the small things, the softness in her eyes that had been gone at home for months, the way his body curved toward hers like he belonged there. It wasn't lust. It was possession. I closed the book and slid everything back exactly the way I found it. No panic. No rage. Just a cold, spreading clarity. I knew what she treasured more than our marriage, more than our history, more than anything. Her career. Her department. Her students. The illusion of being the brilliant, untouchable scholar. And I knew then I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to yell or beg or demand. I was going to study her the way she studied everyone else. I was going to dissect her like a failed thesis. I was going to burn her name out of academia one calculated footnote at a time. The betrayal wasn't the sex. It was the arrogance. The fact she thought I'd never notice. That she thought she was so much smarter. That I was some oblivious idiot who wouldn't recognize the shape of silence, the symmetry of lies. I picked up her laptop and opened it. Password protected, of course. But I already knew her pattern. It was always the same, the year we met and the title of her first publication. 10 digits. Easy. The screen flickered on, revealing a world she thought I'd never enter. Drafts. Emails. Memos. Internal reviews of other candidates. Praise she gave herself under anonymous peer review submissions. Her own publications, stitched together Frankenstein style from the writings of her most gifted students. Including Ryan Denson. Including others. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had built her entire career on stolen minds. And I was going to make sure she lost every inch of it. Slowly. Publicly. Academically. She used to hum while she cooked, some soft, tuneless little melody that made no sense but always felt like home. I didn't realize it had stopped until one evening I walked into the kitchen, and it was just quiet. Not silence, exactly. There were the sounds of sizzling pans and the clink of silverware. But the warmth was gone, replaced with something clinical, mechanical. like she was performing a task instead of living a life. She smiled at me when I asked how her day was, but her eyes flicked past me as if checking for someone else standing behind. Busy, good, same as always, she said, then turned back to her pot like the conversation was over before it started. It didn't feel like distance at first, more like a fog I couldn't see through yet. She started staying later on campus, citing departmental meetings or thesis reviews, even though her calendar on the fridge had nothing listed. I didn't question it. I was proud of her, of everything she had built. Her students adored her, the university spotlighted her in every quarterly newsletter, and when her book got shortlisted for a national award, I threw a dinner party just for the two of us. I bought her the wine she liked, the dry red that made her laugh a little louder, and she toasted with me, though her glass stayed mostly full. She said she was on a health kick, something about clarity and grounding. That's what she called it. Grounding. A few weeks later, she started keeping a journal, a thick leather one with a strap, always tucked into her work bag. I asked her what she was writing. Thoughts, she said. Just thoughts. Then she smiled, tight, polite, practiced, and told me she was reading more about boundaries and self-awareness. She said we had grown too codependent and she needed to find herself again. That word. Again. As if she had been lost, buried beneath the routines we built together, as if I had been some weight holding her back instead of the man who carried her through 2 job changes, a miscarriage, and her first book rejection. But I didn't argue. I told her I understood, that I supported her. What else was I supposed to say? She didn't ask for space with a fight. She asked for it like a doctor diagnosing a slow disease, gentle, clinical, inevitable. Her wardrobe changed. Slowly, then all at once. The long cardigans, the sensible flats, the soft scarves were replaced with sleek, sharper lines. Heels she used to complain hurt her feet. Lipstick that left traces on wine glasses but none on me. I saw the change but didn't want to name it. I wanted to believe it was just evolution, a phase, a stylistic awakening. But when I leaned in to kiss her one morning, she turned her face just enough that my lips brushed her cheek instead. I'm running late, she said, even though her watch reads 7:13 a.m., and she didn't teach until 9. Still, I nodded, waved goodbye, told her to have a good day. She did this thing now. Whenever she came home, she'd sit in the car for a few minutes before coming inside. At first, I thought it was a phone call. Then maybe she was just decompressing. But one night, I walked past the window and saw her in the driver's seat, engine off, staring dead ahead, not moving. Like she was bracing for something. Like the house, our house, was the hardest place to walk into. She started locking her phone. Not just the lock screen, but her apps. Even the gallery. I noticed it when I tried to grab it to check the time during dinner. Let me, she said too quickly, snatching it with a forced smile. I have sensitive work stuff in there. That was the first lie I heard in her voice. Not the words, but the tone. The defensiveness wrapped in sugar. I let it go, but the seed was planted. I started noticing other things. Her social media went private, not from the world, just from me. Her Instagram, once full of artsy coffee shop pics and candid department selfies, was now inaccessible. I'm detoxing, she said. Just keeping things minimal. She started doing yoga weekends, short retreats upstate that didn't allow phones for spiritual cleansing. She came back smelling like cologne I didn't own. When I asked if she made any new friends, she said, not the kind you'd know. And just like that, I felt the crack, not a break, not yet, but a fracture deep enough to echo. One night, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. A dinner for 2 at a high-end place in town. I hadn't been there in months. The date matched the night she said she stayed late grading. I stared at the tiny print like it could explain itself. She had salmon. He had whiskey. I had leftovers at home. She walked in right after, saw the paper in my hand, and didn't flinch. Just said, that's from a departmental celebration, then kissed my cheek and went upstairs. I stood there holding the lie like it was fragile. I still wanted to believe her. I still wanted to trust the woman I married. But trust doesn't break like glass. It erodes. And in the silence that followed, I realized I was already slipping into the space she said she needed, unseen, unfelt, unnecessary. It was the morning after her lecture panel in Albany, the one she had prepped for with so much exaggerated stress that I'd almost started believing it was real. She'd packed the night before like she was going away for a month, 2 dresses, a laptop, her diffuser, a journal, her lucky necklace she hadn't worn in years. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, barely meeting my eye, then walked out with the calm of a woman completely sure she wouldn't be questioned. I watched her drive off, thinking about the way her eyes had flicked over my shoulder one too many times in the past month, the way her hugs had become half-hearted, one-arm things. But I didn't stop her. I waited. And while she was gone, I didn't track her car. I didn't snoop through her messages. I didn't call her hotel. I did something simpler. I opened her work email. She'd forgotten to log out on the desktop at home. She always claimed she kept that separate, sacred, professional, but people get lazy when they think you're blind. I went straight to the search bar and typed in one name, Ryan. Dozens of emails popped up. Some academic, some routine, but then I noticed the timestamps. Late. Obscenely late. 1:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. 12:11 a.m. on a Friday. And the subject lines weren't always about his thesis. About last night. That conversation we had. Still thinking about what you said. I opened one. It was a reply from her. Short, cryptic, but unmistakably intimate. You know I'm in it. You're not a mistake. You make me feel real. My mouth didn't move. My breathing didn't change. I was already outside my body, watching from somewhere above. I clicked through 3 more. They grew bolder, riskier. She had forwarded him unpublished drafts of her upcoming book and called him the muse I never thought I'd meet. She'd sent him her hotel itinerary, not just once, but as a standing routine. And there it was, buried in a reply chain. A PDF of a flight confirmation for a room booked not in Albany, but in a boutique hotel 40 minutes away, under both their names. I read it twice. Then a third time. I kept scrolling. There were pictures. She'd attached a selfie she took in the mirror of the hotel bathroom, in the same dress she left our house wearing. One hand in her hair, the neckline lower than she ever wore around me anymore. The smirk meant for someone who hadn't paid for a decade of her ambitions. And in the background, barely visible through the mirror, was a man's coat hanging on the chair behind her. Not mine. I saved it all. Every file. Every thread. Copied to a hidden drive with a timestamp and backup cloud link. My heartbeat slowed, not sped up. Something in me cooled so violently I felt physically lighter. Like my blood had turned to air. I stood there at the desk, watching the screen as if it were a slow-burning fire. Not even rage, just awakening. I knew, in that exact second, this wasn't infidelity. This was strategic betrayal. She hadn't just fallen into someone's arms. She had made a plan, built it, maintained it, protected it, lied for it, rewarded it, while I paid the mortgage, while I cooked dinner, while I rubbed her back when she said she had migraines. I heard the front door open. She was back. Early. The conference ended ahead of schedule, she called casually, kicking off her heels. I figured I'd surprise you. I didn't turn around. I didn't say a word. I just clicked the last email closed and let the screen go black. She walked into the kitchen, and I listened to her pour coffee like she hadn't just shattered reality 12 hours earlier. She hummed a little tune, the same one she used to when we were happy. And I knew right then she had no idea I knew. Not yet. Not today. And that gave me the most dangerous weapon I could ever hold, silence. Because now, every word she spoke was ammunition. Every fake laugh, every excuse, every absent glance, each was a nail I'd later use to build her professional coffin. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to ask her why. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough. She was done. She just didn't know it yet. I didn't need to break into her phone or sneak through her drawers anymore. I already knew she was guilty. But I didn't want just evidence. I wanted context. I wanted the full architecture of her betrayal. I wanted to see the blueprints she thought she had hidden from me, so I could dismantle her life with the same precision she used to build it. So I played dumb. I asked about her day with just enough curiosity to invite a lie, but not enough to raise suspicion. Her answers were always just a bit too rehearsed now. I'd ask what lecture she gave, and she'd hesitate a beat too long before remembering the topic. 19th century gender theory, she'd say, sipping tea. It went really well. So I checked the university's website. She wasn't even scheduled to speak that day. Another professor had covered the class due to a last-minute scheduling conflict. Her sick day, apparently. I started keeping a ledger, an actual, physical notebook I kept in the garage between 2 bins of holiday decorations she never touched. Every lie, every inconsistency, every little detail that didn't quite fit, I wrote it down with date and time. I cross-referenced her calendar with her work's website, her phone's call logs, which she still thought I couldn't access, and the shared location she'd forgotten she'd once given me during a road trip years ago. She never remembered to disable it. Amateur move. One night, she claimed she was leading a faculty dinner for new grad students. I said I'd order takeout, and catch up on reading. Instead, I logged into our bank account and watched a charge hit from a high-end sushi place across town. I called the restaurant from a burner app and asked to confirm a reservation for 2 under Professor Lang. There it was, a quiet 2-top, camellit, corner seat. When I asked if they were still dining, the hostess said, "They just ordered dessert." I thanked her and hung up. She texted me 20 minutes later. "Long night. Still talking to students. You okay?" I replied with a smile emoji and told her not to rush. I wanted her to stay in that illusion a little longer. The longer she thought she was winning, the harder the fall would be. I began triangulating her movements by watching the people around her. I didn't follow her. I followed her friend Karen. Karen was a gossip queen, always tagging people in selfies, uploading boomerangs from wine nights. I created a fake academic networking profile under the name Alex C., a grad student from another university, recently transferred. I made sure to follow all of Karen's social accounts. She accepted. Within 3 days, I saw a video posted to her story. Blurry, low light, but unmistakable. My wife, in a booth at some downtown speakeasy, laughing, leaning against Ryan like gravity itself had betrayed me. Her hand in his. It was framed as a crazy night out, the kind of fleeting moment that disappears in 24 hours. Unless, of course, someone screenshots it, which I did, twice. Meanwhile, I began testing her lies with surgical precision. I'd plant false details, say things like, "Didn't you mention your seminar was canceled tomorrow?" just to see how quickly she corrected me. If she hesitated, even for a second, I knew she was struggling to keep the story straight. Once, I said, "I saw Ryan's paper got accepted into the review board, congrats," just to watch her blink. Her face twitched, just a flicker, but it was enough. "Oh yeah," she said too slowly. "He worked really hard on that." I nodded, never breaking eye contact. She looked down, her mouth pressed tight. Another time, I scheduled a flower delivery to her office while she claimed to be off campus for a meeting. When I checked the delivery confirmation, it was signed by her personally. At 3:17 p.m. She hadn't even left the building. So I called the front desk, introduced myself as her husband, and asked if she was in. "Yes," they said. "She just went upstairs with a young man, probably one of her students." I thanked them and hung up. Never told her. Not a word. I wanted the noose to tighten without her ever seeing the rope. I started planting little seeds. Comments like, "I've been thinking about taking a sabbatical, getting away from the city. Maybe we could go together." She'd nod with a strange hesitation, say things like, "That sounds lovely," but her smile would falter, like the future she saw didn't include me anymore, and she didn't know how to hide that yet. I watched her carefully, studied the inflections in her voice, the way she always paused before saying she loved me. It was performative now, like a theater actor who's lost connection with the script. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct. I didn't even cry. I just kept watching. Because by then, I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her reckoning. Just not the kind that knocked on the door screaming. I was already in the house. Already in the walls. Already building the case that would ruin everything she had sacrificed me to protect. The university's annual fundraising gala was the perfect setting. An elegant ballroom lit in soft amber, full of faculty in overpriced gowns and tuxedos. A chamber quartet, playing some indecipherable classical background noise, while the smell of catered sophistication clung to the air like perfume. She walked in beside me, radiant in her crimson evening dress, laughing too loudly at some meaningless comment I made about the valet. To everyone else, we looked like a power couple, the rising star of the humanities department and her supportive, quietly successful husband. But to me, she looked like a mask stapled onto a stranger. I had arranged it all, offering to sponsor a portion of the event under my company's name just to gain access to the internal A/V systems. I had been working with the event coordinator under the guise of highlighting faculty achievements in a surprise tribute reel, something to celebrate their ongoing contributions. She knew nothing, of course. She just thought she was finally being honored, center stage, spotlight ready. I watched her mingle, laugh, sip her wine without ever offering me a glance of genuine affection. Then the MC took the stage and introduced a short video titled, "Behind the Brilliance, the People Who Inspire Us." I excused myself, citing a call, and slipped behind the curtains with the AV tech. The lights dimmed. The screen lit up. The first 30 seconds were perfectly ordinary. Students saying how much she had changed their lives, snippets from lectures, photos from campus events. Then it shifted. Her voice, breathless in a voicemail. Last night was everything. You're the only thing keeping me sane right now. A pixelated photo followed. Her face pressed against Ryan's neck in the passenger seat of a car, his hand on her thigh. Gasps echoed across the ballroom like small detonations. I emerged slowly from the side of the room as the reel continued. Text messages appeared next, her telling him she needed to be careful, that her husband was starting to notice things. Then more photos, blurry but undeniable, taken by me from across restaurants, through campus windows, from a safe distance in parking lots. She stood frozen in the center of it all, her wine glass trembling, the blood drained from her face so completely she looked like porcelain about to shatter. The MC tried to recover, stammered something about technical difficulties, but it was too late. The damage had been done. I walked calmly up to her as the lights came back on. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first, just a dry click of disbelief. Then the rehearsed script began. It's not what it looks like. I tilted my head slightly, expression unreadable, and replied, then explain what it is. Her eyes darted around, looking for someone, anyone, to rescue her. We were just talking. He's been going through things. I was helping him. I handed her a printed copy of one of her emails, highlighted passages discussing hotel reservations, intimate touches, her fears of being caught. Her hand trembled. Okay, I made a mistake, she said, her voice lowering as she tried to herd me toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. But you haven't exactly been present either. You know that. You've been distant too. I smiled faintly. I didn't realize being distant meant I deserved to be replaced. Her mouth curled, desperation pushing her into a smirk. Don't act like you're some perfect saint. Maybe if you'd shown a little more passion, a little more drive, I wouldn't have needed to find it elsewhere. The words hung in the air like ash. So you needed him? I asked. Like a muse? Someone to plagiarize your career from. Her face contorted, rage, panic, humiliation, all fighting for dominance. You think you're so clever, she hissed under her breath. You think this little stunt makes you a hero? All you did was destroy me in front of everyone I've worked with for 10 years. I leaned in just slightly, just enough for her to hear the razor behind my smile. No, I said. You destroyed yourself. I just held up the mirror. Her expression cracked, the last veneer of control sliding off as a colleague glanced over at her with widened eyes and whispered to another. You have no idea what you've done, she whispered. You've ruined everything. I nodded slowly. Not yet, but I'm close. She stepped back, breathing hard now, her hands clenching and unclenching like she wanted to tear something apart, but couldn't decide where to start. She looked around the room, at the eyes slowly turning toward her, at the whispers forming like storm clouds, at the phone screens beginning to light up with frantic texts. Her world was closing in, and I hadn't raised my voice once. I hadn't thrown a punch. I hadn't even needed to lie. She opened her mouth again, but no sound came out this time, just silence. A silence that said everything she couldn't. I stood there, still and calm, as the tension thickened around us like smoke in a sealed room. I didn't walk away. Not yet. I wanted her to feel every second of it. She followed me into the empty hallway behind the ballroom like a shadow made of static, heels clacking too loud on marble, breath sharp, like she was choking on her own fury. The second the door shut behind us, she let the mask fall and the venom pour out. You smug, pathetic little man, she snapped, voice shaking with a blend of rage and humiliation. You think this makes you strong? You think humiliating me in front of my colleagues makes you some kind of hero? I didn't answer. I just looked at her, expression unreadable, and that silence infuriated her more than anything I could have said. She stepped closer, almost nose to nose. You always had to make everything about you. Your little games, your routines, your obsession with being calm and rational. You're emotionally dead inside. You know that? That's why I needed someone else. You smothered me with your silence. Still, I said nothing. I watched her unravel like a thread being yanked from the hem of her own disguise. She tried again, switching tones. You could have talked to me, she said, quieter now, suddenly dripping with false vulnerability. You could have told me you felt disconnected. I thought we were broken long before Ryan. He just made me feel seen. I tilted my head slightly. So you were invisible? I asked, voice low and even. That's impressive, considering how loudly you lied. Her face twitched like I'd slapped her, and the tears started, perfectly timed, perfectly placed, a performance she'd used before on students, coworkers, even me, once. You don't understand what it's like to feel alone in your own marriage, she whispered, stepping back, voice cracking, eyes glassy. I felt like I was drowning, and you just stood there. You never reached for me. I nodded slowly, letting the silence between us breathe. Then I said, and instead of asking for help, you swam to someone else's bed. That landed. Her expression darkened instantly. The tears dried just as fast as they appeared. You know what your problem is, she spat. You think being calm makes you right. You think being cold makes you powerful. But you're just weak. You're boring. You were always so goddamn boring. I watched her, still not reacting, just absorbing. And then I said, and yet you needed me to build your entire life. That hit harder than anything else had. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came. So she shifted again, this time to fire. You made me this way. You doled me down with your schedules and your structure. You drained the color out of me. Ryan reminded me that I'm not just some paper-pushing professor married to a spreadsheet and human skin. I let the insult hang in the air, still unmoved. Then I took one step closer and said, then why are you the one who's begging now? She blinked. I'm not begging. Yes, I cut in, softly, deliberately. You are. You're begging me to get angry, to yell, to care. But I don't. Not anymore. Her eyes widened, just for a second, like something inside her finally registered the shift. You're not even a man, she hissed. A real man would have fought for me. I almost smiled. A real woman wouldn't need to be stolen back. Her face contorted, rage, shame, something that didn't know where to go anymore. She started pacing, hands in her hair, muttering, You think you've won? You think exposing me ruins me? I'm smarter than you. I'll survive this. Ryan still wants me. I have tenure. No, I said, calmly. You had those things. Now you have damage control. She stopped pacing, chest heaving, eyes bloodshot and desperate. You can't just act like none of this hurts you, she said. You loved me. I know you did. I did, I replied. Until I met the version of you that lied for sport. She flinched. Just a twitch. And then, like glass starting to crack under pressure, her voice finally broke. What do you want from me? I leaned in, close enough for her to feel how detached I truly was. Nothing, I said. That's what you are now. Nothing. And the terror in her eyes was immediate, because she realized then that she wasn't dealing with a betrayed husband trying to make sense of the ruins. She was standing across from the man who had already stepped over the ashes, already begun building a better world without her in it. And the worst part? She wasn't even worth the rage. Just the silence that followed. The morning after the gala, while she stayed curled up in the guest room pretending to cry for a marriage she'd already buried months ago, I began the final phase of what I had been quietly building for weeks. Revenge wasn't about rage. It was about symmetry, giving back to her exactly what she had carved out of me, piece by piece, but in reverse. And I had every piece in place. First, I transferred all the funds from our joint account into a separate account solely under my name, an account I had opened months ago under a trust she didn't know existed, one designed specifically to protect assets from dissolution. The password was her anniversary date. The irony tasted like steel. Next came the house, technically mine, purchased before the marriage, title never legally co-owned, though she always assumed otherwise. I quietly filed paperwork to remove her name from all utility and maintenance accounts, and I scheduled a locksmith for the following week. She wouldn't even realize until her key stopped working. Then I paused our shared credit card accounts, reissued a new one in my name only, and flagged all charges from the past 6 months. I wasn't going to dispute them. I just wanted the receipts ready. I sorted through them like a forensic accountant, circling the hotels, the restaurants, the boutique shops she told me were staff gifts or academic travel needs. One in particular stood out, a weekend spa retreat labeled as a departmental wellness seminar. I called the venue. There was no seminar that weekend, just a private couple's suite reserved under her name. I filed the printout with the rest. Next, I contacted the university, anonymously at first. I submitted a digital packet through their internal ethics board tip line, including screenshots of emails, recordings of voicemails, and flagged excerpts from her latest book proposal, all of which were clearly plagiarized from her students. I highlighted one in particular, Ryan Denson's thesis, whole sections of which had been lifted nearly word for word into her chapter on emerging masculinity in postmodern academia. I cross-referenced the dates with her submission logs. She'd used his work before he submitted it for grading. She hadn't even bothered to edit out his academic voice. I ended the submission with a note: if this is your standard of scholarship, tenure should come with a disclaimer. Simultaneously, I printed the same packet, added handwritten annotations, and overnighted it to 3 department heads, the dean, and 2 members of the university's funding board. The copies were neatly bound, professionally labeled, and titled, Academic Misconduct, an Informal Report. No threats. No accusations. Just facts. Cold, clean, devastating facts. Then I moved on to her reputation. I created a secondary email and sent a very polite, very formal message to her parents. It included no emotion, just documents. For your records, I wrote, attaching images, transcripts, a timeline, and one particularly intimate selfie taken in her university office. I signed it anonymously. Her mother called me 3 hours later, sobbing. Her father didn't call at all. I didn't need them to yell at her. I just needed her to know they knew. I repeated this with 3 of her closest friends, selectively choosing the ones who still had some semblance of moral standard, not the enablers. Each received a simple message with a subject line: this is what she's been doing. Nothing more. I didn't ask for loyalty. I didn't ask them to pick sides. I just opened their eyes and let human nature do the rest. And then, finally, I initiated the legal steps. I met with the divorce attorney I had on standby since week 3 of the investigation. She had reviewed everything already. With the evidence of infidelity, financial misconduct, and potential academic fraud, we were filing not just for divorce, but for asset protection, reputational damages, and spousal misconduct. She assured me the case would cripple her public standing without needing to go to court. Mediation would be offered. Silence could be bought for a steep enough price. I instructed her to decline any settlement until the full extent of the academic investigation had concluded. I wanted that bomb to land first. I set the timeline like a domino's course. Everything staggered, days apart, slow enough to make her think she could still fix it, fast enough to trap her in freefall. She still walked around the house pretending I'd cooled off. Still left passive-aggressive notes about having a serious talk soon. Still texted half-hearted apologies. But she didn't know she was already legally removed from everything. Didn't know her university inbox was under review. Didn't know that next Monday she'd walk into a meeting that looked like business as usual, only to be greeted by HR and 2 ethics committee chairs. She thought she had time. That was her last mistake. I didn't need to watch her cry again. I just needed to be gone the moment the walls collapsed. All that was left was silence. And she wouldn't even hear it coming. The faculty lounge was packed, soft chatter over clinking glassware, the smell of catered shrimp skewers and cheap white wine trying to mask the tension already thick in the air. She walked in beside me, holding her phone in one hand and a half-smile on her lips, the same practiced, calculated expression she'd worn for years whenever stepping into a room full of people who thought they knew her. This was supposed to be her day, the unveiling of her upcoming book and an announcement of her nomination for Associate Dean. She'd planned this down to the color of her heels, the shade of her lipstick, the pitch of her laugh. But as she stepped through the door, something shifted. Conversations didn't pause, exactly, they twisted. A few people turned their heads just slightly. A whisper here. A narrowed eye there. Her smile faltered for a breath, just a blink, but it was enough. She leaned toward me, whispered, "Do I have something on my dress?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Let her feel the absence of reassurance she'd grown, so used to harvesting from me. Then Karen walked up, her best friend, her brunch partner, her secret keeper. Only this time, Karen didn't hug her. She barely looked at her. She turned to me instead, placed a hand gently on my shoulder, and said, "If you need anything, I'm here." That was the first fracture. Her head snapped toward Karen, eyes darting like she didn't understand the language being spoken. "What the hell does that mean?" she asked. Karen just walked away. One by one, the room began to turn cold. The new intern from the communications team stared at her, mouth slightly open. The tenured professor she used to call a dinosaur behind a podium suddenly refused to meet her eyes. Her former TA, the one she mocked in private messages I'd quietly sent to the ethics board, stood with his arms crossed, watching her like someone waiting for a punchline. And then Dean Holloway entered the room, 3 steps behind him, 2 members from HR. She saw them before they saw her, and I could feel her heartbeat from the way her hands suddenly gripped mine without permission. I didn't return it. I just let her hold onto a limb that no longer belonged to her. "What's happening?" she asked, voice lower now, jaw tight. Why is HR here? I turned to her. You'll find out soon. Her smile snapped like a dead twig. What did you do? She hissed. But she already knew. She was just hoping it wasn't real. The dean took the microphone, began the formal announcements. He welcomed everyone, thanked the sponsors. Then his voice shifted just slightly, an edge of formality, a hint of caution. Before we continue, he said, I need to address something serious that's been brought to our attention. A silence swept the room. She froze. I didn't move. We've received allegations of academic misconduct involving the misappropriation of student work, violations of professional boundaries, and potential breaches of ethical research standards, he continued. Effective immediately, Professor Lang will be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. She let out a short, desperate laugh. You can't be serious, she said aloud, loud enough to draw eyes. This is some mistake. I've been at this university for 10 years. This is absurd. No one responded. The room didn't argue. It just watched. The dean stepped back, and the two HR officials approached her with quiet professionalism. She turned to me, panic now raw in her face. Did you do this? Tell me you didn't send them. Tell me you didn't. I said nothing. Just watched. Her voice cracked. This is my career. This is my reputation. You vindictive bastard. What the hell have you done? And then came the second fall. Ryan walked in. Alone. Late. His eyes swept the room, found her, and stopped. He didn't rush to her. He didn't take her hand. He walked toward the dean instead and whispered something into his ear. Her mouth dropped open. Ryan, she called. Ryan, tell them. Tell them it was mutual. Tell them. He didn't even look at her. Just nodded to the HR rep and walked past her like she was furniture. She tried to follow him, but one of the officials gently stepped between them. Please stay where you are, Professor Lang, she said. Professor Lang. Past tense already baked into her name. She turned to me one last time. You stood there and let this happen. You let them destroy me. I met her eyes, those wide, pleading eyes that once made me weak. No, I said, voice even. You did that. I just made sure they saw it. Her face crumbled. Her hand went to her mouth. Her legs buckled, and she grabbed the back of a chair to keep from falling. No one moved to help. No one interrupted. The only sound was the quiet hum of a fan overhead and the slow, steady collapse of a woman who had built her kingdom on stolen bricks. I stood there, still, silent, letting her see me see her. And that was the moment she finally understood. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to strike her. I had already won. It happened at her parents' anniversary party, 50 guests packed into a private event hall with white linen-covered tables and champagne fountains, all there to toast decades of love and loyalty. The irony was almost comedic. She showed up late, as usual, arm looped through her mother's, acting like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been suspended from the university or thrown to the academic wolves. People whispered the moment she walked in. Some knew. Some only suspected. All of them stared. I was already there, standing near the far end of the room beside her father, who hadn't looked her in the eye since I sent him the packet. Her mother had tried to smooth it over, families make mistakes, darling, but the evidence didn't leave much room for sentiment. Then, across the room, Ryan showed up. Alone, awkward, clearly dragged here by obligation. Her head jerked when she saw him, like she didn't expect him to show his face after walking past her at the faculty lounge like she was a stranger. I saw her flinch when he grabbed a drink and sat as far away from her as possible. The distance between them screamed louder than any scandal. I walked up to her when the first toast ended. She stiffened, turning toward me with a practiced half-smile. Really? She said under her breath. You're going to make a scene here? At my parents' celebration? Her voice cracked, but she steadied it. Haven't you done enough? I raised my voice just enough for the nearby table, where her old college friend Melissa and two of her coworkers sat, to hear me clearly. No, not yet. The room hushed slightly, like a wind had passed through. She rolled her eyes, loud enough for attention, trying to reclaim the room. Oh, here it comes, the poor, betrayed husband monologue. Let me guess. I'm a monster, you're a saint, and we should all thank you for not slapping me in public. I stepped forward. No, you're not a monster. You're worse. You're ordinary. A cliché in lipstick. A woman who wanted to feel powerful so badly, she used a student half her age to prop up a fantasy. You didn't fall in love, you fell in lust with your own reflection. Someone gasped. Her mother took a step forward, but stopped when her husband gently pulled her back. You think you're clever? She snapped, voice rising. You think digging through my emails and playing detective makes you some kind of genius? All you did was stalk me. I didn't have to stalk you, I said, louder now. You left a trail of lies so obvious it might as well have been a confession. You signed hotel receipts with hearts next to his name. You saved selfies in your academic folder. You're not smart, you're reckless. Murmurs spread like fire. She turned, searching for someone, anyone, to step in. Dad, are you seriously just standing there? She barked. He looked at her like he didn't recognize the daughter who used to hold his hand during thunderstorms. I raised you better than this, he said, and turned away. Her face twisted, and she turned the full force of her fury on me. You want to act like the victim? She shouted. You want to play the martyr? You were boring, cold, predictable. You sucked the life out of me one dinner at a time, one silent night at a time. Ryan made me feel something. He made me feel alive. I turned toward Ryan, who now looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Then tell them, Ryan, I called out, voice steady, sharp. Tell them how alive she made you feel when she handed you your own thesis under her name. Tell them about the voicemails, the promises, the job references she gave you behind closed doors. He shook his head and stood up. I'm not part of this, he muttered. You were never part of it, I said, watching him retreat like a ghost. She watched him go, then whirled back to me, chest heaving. You've ruined me, she screamed. You destroyed my reputation, my career, my relationships. What do you want from me? Nothing, I said, loud enough for the room to absorb it like gospel. That's the price. That's what betrayal costs. You don't get forgiveness. You don't get understanding. You don't even get hate. You get nothing. Her hands trembled, mascara smudged under her eyes, dress wrinkled from where she'd been wringing it in clenched fists. You think this makes you strong? She whispered, almost pleading now. No, I said. Walking away from you with my soul intact makes me strong. Her voice broke into a sob, and for the first time, she didn't fight back. She just collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking, as half the room turned away from her and the other half stared like she was a wreck on the highway, tragic, but impossible not to watch. And I stood there, calm, tall, unshaken, and I didn't move. I let her see what real power looks like, not rage, not revenge, restraint. 3 weeks after the party, she was officially terminated, pending academic review, they said. But everyone knew the outcome was sealed the moment the evidence hit the boardroom table. Her name was quietly scrubbed from the faculty website, her office emptied without ceremony, and her email auto-replied with a cold, final no longer with the university. Ryan disappeared within days. Word was he transferred to another program across the state, hoping the stink wouldn't follow. It did. As for her, the fallout was surgical. Friends she once bragged about, the brunch circle, the yoga girls, the women who shared her wine-fueled "men are so exhausting" rants vanished. Blocked her. Unfollowed. One even changed gyms just to avoid being in the same locker room. Her parents stopped answering her calls. Her mother sent me a letter, handwritten and soaked in sorrow, apologizing on behalf of a daughter she no longer recognized. Her father never spoke her name again. Her social media, once curated like a glossy magazine of faux academic glamour, went dark. She tried to spin it at first, told a few people she was taking time to heal, recalibrating, pursuing freelance research. But no one bought it. The whispers in the coffee shops were louder than her denials. I heard she moved into a cramped apartment in a neighboring town, one of those sad little places where the neighbors don't ask questions and the mailboxes are dented from years of neglect. She took a job at a tutoring center under a different last name. No tenure. No acclaim. No articles with her name in bold. Just worksheets and underpaid overtime. She reached out 5 times in total. Once by email, subject line, "Please just talk to me." Once through a mutual friend who delivered a trembling voice message of hers begging to meet. Twice through unsent letters that somehow ended up folded beneath my doormat, pages crumpled and ink blurred from tears or rain or both. And the last one was in person. She showed up at my door one rainy Tuesday evening, wearing an oversized hoodie and holding a photo album we once made during our first vacation. Her eyes were hollow. Her voice barely carried. "I don't want to fix anything," she whispered. "I just need you to know I remember who we were. I still love you." I looked at her. I mean, really looked at her. And I saw not my wife, not the woman I once defended in rooms full of strangers, but a stranger, a cautionary tale in human form, living proof of what happens when ego replaces love, when lies become a lifestyle. I took the photo album from her hands, placed it gently on the porch floor, and met her eyes one last time. "Strange," I said quietly. "I don't even remember your name anymore." She broke then. Fully. No pretense, no armor, no sharp tongue. Just a broken, weeping shell that finally understood how far she'd fallen and how far I'd climbed out. I stepped back, closed the door, and never looked back. And that, my friends, is how you bury a betrayal without ever raising your voice. Thank you for listening to my story. I want to hear from you. Where are you from? And did you enjoy this journey? Let's talk.